We are back for our climate hat trick. 3 stories from the news this week through the lens of climate and sustainability in sport. Let's get going. Story one is about F1. So, Formula One's sustainability shift has sparked debate. A lot of you will know that F1's new 2026 rules are out now for this season, meaning that cars are powered by 100% sustainable fuels and a near 50-50 split between electric and combustion energy. So that should dramatically improve efficiency and obviously reduce reliance on fossil fuels as well. On paper, this is a big moment for climate action in sport and in motorsport, especially. F1 has always been a testbed for innovation, and this is relating to new low carbon transport innovations, which obviously potentially in the future could influence road cars and wider mobility systems as well. In racing terms, there should be upsides, more overtaking, more strategy, and new forms of competition shaped by energy deployment. But some top drivers aren't convinced by the new F1 rules, saying they are becoming energy managers, not racers. So, what are some of the drivers saying about the new F1 rules for this season? Max Verstappen's been the most vocal critic, calling the new cars, quote, anti-racing, close quote, and comparing it to Mario Kart, which I think is quite funny. Lewis Hamilton has raised concerns describing the rules as complex, warning drivers are struggling to understand them. Carlos Sainz criticised the racing as feeling artificial, and after the Chinese Grand Prix, veteran racer Fernando Alonso called it the Battery World Championships. So fair to say it hasn't landed very well with the drivers yet, but as we know, when things change, people don't like it. Human beings generally aren't that happy with change. We like the status quo. We like things the way they are, but things are going to have to dramatically shift. And I think this is almost like a meta point that in Formula One, like in climate action more broadly, what feels different, unusual, unnatural at first, often very quickly becomes the new normal. And that's something we're all going to have to get used to. In line with that, I wanted to go back and look at a few other changes in F1's history that were criticised at the time, which are now just completely normal and accepted within the sport, to show that whilst there is this negative feedback just now, in line with climate action and the positive impact of it, we're likely to see it become the new normal quite quickly. So there are more, but I've chosen 3 shifts in F1's history where these changes happened. So let's highlight those. So one of the changes, the most recent one I want to highlight, is the Halo safety device that was introduced in 2018. This was widely criticised for aesthetics at the time. Fans and drivers said it ruined the look of Formula One cars, and it was again Max Verstappen who was sceptical early on, saying, quote, "You can improve the car, but we don't need this thing on top of it. It's not just the looks. I don't think it's necessary," close quote. We know the Halo safety device has since that time saved multiple drivers from serious injury or even death and is now universally accepted. DRS is the next one I want to chat about in 2011. So DRS was introduced to increase overtaking, and critics at the time when it was released hated it. It was seen as artificial overtaking. Drivers could pass too easily on straights, they said. Purists said it removed skill. Does all of this sound familiar? Now, it is still debated, but it's widely accepted as part of the racing toolkit. So again, another change that people were sceptical about that's become the new normal. And the last one I want to highlight was the refueling ban in 2010. So again, it was a change of strategy. F1 banned mid-race refueling, which completely changed the way teams and drivers approached the race. Of course, it made the cars heavier at the start. It meant the pit stop strategy was simplified, and some even said it made the races less dynamic. Now we know it's just normal, and people who maybe are into F1 now and weren't around or weren't watching the sport in 2010 probably don't even know that was the case back then. It's normal. It actually improved safety and reduced logistical complexity as well. So again, examples of things that were perhaps unnatural, skeptical, or pushed back on at the time that are now the new normal. And sports do evolve, especially motorsport, around safety and around engineering and innovation, shifts to change the spectacle of the sport. We are seeing this quite a lot. There are critics to every change, of course. Already, critics have come out and said that F1's decarbonising the car, but of course, the sport's biggest emissions still come from global travel and logistics, not just the engines of the cars going around the track. Again, every shift, there's always, whenever something positive happens in one area of a sport, unfortunately, it amplifies the areas where shifts and changes are slower in other areas. I think we have to be pragmatic about it. What this does do is bring the conversation to the track, which means it's much more visible to fans. Yes, of course, we need to decarbonise the transport more broadly, but they are essentially behind the scenes for fans. And this is a change that's happening on the track that's in the conversation, and there is benefit to that. Of course, it brings up the question whether we're solving the biggest problems or the most visible ones. But I think we have to solve both. I think the big shifts that need to happen behind the scenes across many sports are where the biggest emissions take place. But of course, the optics of sport, what fans see and how the media presents it and how broadcasters show it, is a way we can communicate and shift change. So we need both of these things to happen. We need to use the power of sport and the optics around these changes to reach people, whilst also dramatically reducing our impact behind the scenes. So that's our first story from the climate hat trick. The second story is about rising temperatures sapping our motivation to move. So, according to research published in the Lancet Global Health this week, rising global temperatures, especially super hot days and heat waves, are making people less physically active around the world and increasing risks to health and well-being. You probably knew this in your gut anyway. When it's super hot outside, we are less inclined to go out and do intense physical activity. But of course, we always want data and research and science to back up these assumptions. This research publication is The Effect of Climate Change on Physical Inactivity, a panel data study across 156 countries from 2000 to 2022. Brought to us, thank you to Christian Garcia Witulski, Mariana Rabassa, Oscar Mello, and Juliana Hello Sarmiento. Physical activity has risen globally, they say, from about 23% in the year 2000 to over 31% in the year 2022. So these rising temperatures alone are undermining and could even reverse the WHO, the World Health Organization's target of cutting physical inactivity by 15% by 2030, which is their goal. Of course, as the planet warms, physical inactivity is rising. And sports bodies, from our perspective, need to adapt. Fewer active people mean a smaller talent pool in the future. And of course, there is a much wider societal systemic issue of bigger health burdens on our economies. The research had some recommendations, so I'm going to share those now and then connect them with perhaps some more direct sporting shifts that we can do. So the research recommends integrating heat risk messages into exercise guidelines. That's great more broadly. And for us in sport, making sure heat risk messaging is part of match day and competition communications is really, really important. A lot of sporting organisations are already doing that. A reminder that we must integrate it and make sure it's very visible. The second recommendation from the report is to direct climate finance towards shade-rich active transport corridors, which is quite difficult to say. Again, as it relates to sport, if you've got a venue or infrastructure in your community, can you use that footprint to support shade-rich active transport corridors in the area between public transport and your venue? Or can you connect with your local authority to invest in shaded walking or cycling routes, connecting sports facilities, connecting with public transport or around your facility? That's going to help not just your fans or participants in your sport, but also the community more broadly. And it could be in line with these general recommendations. The third one is subsidising cooled exercise facilities for at-risk populations. So again, have you got facilities that aren't always in use that you could perhaps offer discounted or free access to older adults, vulnerable communities or children during these heat waves? So that could be indoor climate controlled gyms, pools or courts for people to get involved with. Great for supporting your local community and part of the wider effort of supporting, especially during these super hot days or heat waves that we are experiencing more and more. And the last one, enforcing robust occupational heat safety standards. So for sport, we often think about our athletes competing in these super hot days, but we, of course, cannot ever forget about our workforces. So around either sporting competitions, sporting games, or participation, you have coaches, referees, ground staff, and volunteers who aren't at the peak potentially of their physical fitness like our athletes, but who have to work or stand outside in very, very hot conditions for long periods of time. So how can we make sure the education is there, the risk assessments are taking place, and emergency response to heat exposure is communicated to our workforces who sit around our amazing sporting events as well. So great to think about that. And a reminder, honestly, that extreme heat and the risks of that are never too far away from our sporting context. The last story of the climate hat trick is cold hard proof, testing resilient meals at RA 2026. So this is about Food for White Winters, which is a pilot sustainability project launched by the FIS, the International Ski and Snowboard Federation, at the 2026 Alpine World Cup in RA. So it brought together athletes, climate scientists, chefs, and sustainability experts to test planetary health diets designed to both fuel performance and reduce climate impact. The first meals were presented at the World Cup in March 26. So at selected restaurants, athletes, coaches, conference guests, and volunteers were served these meals, which were designed to meet high performance nutritional needs as well as reduce environmental impact. Initiatives around food, always a good idea. About a third of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions are linked to food production, according to the UN. So it's a great area to focus on. And the menu is based on the Eat Lancet Planetary Health Diet principles, designed to stay within ecological limits whilst meeting elite athletic nutritional needs. The results are going to be published later this year, but it's great to see that this sort of activity is happening. Is it groundbreaking? Yes and no, I guess. Yes, in the fact that this is scientifically proven, it's about nutritional science, and it seems to be measurable, which will be great to see the reports on. Of course, more generally, we are seeing food becoming a bigger part of the conversation in sport. We're seeing the rise of plant-based food options available, and more athletes talking about their nutritionally dense plant-based lifestyle. So not groundbreaking overall, but what I really like about it is most sports sustainability plans that I've seen don't yet systematically address food at scale. There's lots of good examples, but we can probably see more. And a lot of environmental initiatives in sport can be framed as either a sacrifice or a cost center. So like less travel, less energy, and more recycling, those sorts of things, which are really important. But we need to reframe some of this stuff as flipping the script in terms of the benefits. And this could be a good example to look at and point towards, because it shows that these sustainable diets are supporting elite performance, not taking something away. And lastly, it's a statement of, it's not just a statement of intent. A pilot project was implemented at a major sport event, got measured impact reductions, and it's framed within nutritional science as well. The Eat Lancet principles have been adapted for sport. So we don't know what the outcomes are going to be just yet. So it's not perfect, it's not complete, but it does seem to be practical, it does seem to be measurable, and hopefully it is influential, especially with engaging athletes, fans, and sport leaders around climate action. So they are our three stories in this week's climate hat trick. Again, they are Formula One's sustainability shift is sparking debate, rising temperatures are sapping our motivation to move, and cold hard proof around testing resilient meals at RA 2026.